things happen as they happen in general mode. I think they are driving towards a bigger and a larger vision. I think we are all lucky to be living there or associated with the city. Thank you. Thank you again, all of you, for this invitation and also the kind words. Uh, while I am talking about integrated transport, I believe today in the country, if there is something which is functioning well, integrated in all its dimensions, I think that is Surat's transportation system. And therefore, I will talk about Surat's transportation system and its integration and the benefits thereof. But while I go there, before that, I would like to talk about certain principles, certain value systems we all inculcate as students, as teachers, as academicians, as professionals, as individuals in the society. Certain values about the mobility, certain values about what is good, what is bad, what is desirable, what is not desirable. All of that is something which we inculcate, we pick up things, okay, at various stages of our life cycle, and we build on it. And then we start believing them and we start executing them. When we deal with public transport or transport in general and urban transport, I think one important thing which we need to remember, transport for the sake of transport, no. Transport is a derived demand. And we are looking at transport because we are looking at economic progress. Okay. Transport is equal to prosperity. I think that is the way people talk about. Okay. Therefore, you cannot achieve economic growth without mobility. I think let's just be very clear about it. While we talk about mobility, at the same time, we're also concerned with environmental sustainability. Mobility means it has its, while on the one hand it brings economic development, but on the other hand, it also has certain negative externalities. Negative externalities like air pollution, GHG emissions, accidents, and so on and so forth. And therefore, we cannot be just going after mobility without considering environmental sustainability. Economic progress cannot happen with degraded environment. And therefore, how mobility contributes to economic progress and at the same time environmental sustainability is also maintained. I think that's a big thing which we need to keep in mind. Please note, more mobility is not necessarily a better thing to achieve, and you can actually achieve more with less. I think what we need to do is reduce our mobility. In fact, in one of the good things which this pandemic has done, of all the negative contributions, one of the things is that we all work from home, we don't move, but then a lot of what we were doing before continues to function. And therefore, physical mobility is not necessarily a welcome thing. If you could do without physical mobility, why not? I think that's a way to look at it. And finally, our interest is to look at quality of life, people and their quality of life, economic progress, environmental sustainability, and quality of life. These becomes our primary objectives of urban development planning or urban transport planning. As I said, what we are interested in is accessibility, and accessibility is how quickly, how easily, how comfortably, how affordably we can reach, our goods can reach their destinations. And it does not necessarily mean faster mobility. Therefore, mobility is only a tool to achieve accessibility. Therefore, we have at least three dimensions. One is proximity. We could do land use such that activities are close. Okay, it's a very traditional way, upar makan, niche dukan. I think that used to be the most proximate way, where you did not have to go for work outside your own home. You just had to come down or go up. I think that is the way, that's proximity. Mobility is keeping certain speed on the road. I think that's very critical. And then finally, connectivity. I think that's becoming even more critical. And now what we are doing today, we are connected. We have not moved. and we are also not traction. But then virtual connectivity is something which is important. What role it can play in accessibility? A lot of our work again gets influenced by policy initiatives of the national, state, and the local governments. We have National Urban Transport Policy of 2006. We have now a metro rail policy. We have transit-oriented development policy, again coupled with the transport development. And then there is also a framework for capturing value so that you put money back into the system by capturing a part of the value which has been created by urban transport. While we deal with metro rail policy, one must take note of a new development. We had a metro rail and we had BRT and we had bus systems. We had monorail and we had LRT. But now, Government of India has in fact initiated and introduced two rapid transit modes. One mode is Metro Light. It is essentially a light rail. Actually, it is a fully segregated BRT, okay, on rail. That is what is the light rail, Metro Light. I think it has its own advantages and it brings down the cost of metro by about 100 crores per kilometer. Instead of 300 crores, light rail would cost you about 200 crores per kilometer. Metro rail 300, light rail is 200. And then now there is one more which has been introduced, that is Metro Neo. Metro Neo essentially is a bus system. It may be elevated or it may be upgraded. It will be segregated fully, and then it is a guided system. I think, please remember that guided system, since it is established under the Metro Rail Act, it is a guided system. That's a new mode which has been introduced under the Metro Rail Act, and therefore it will be governed by GMRC. If Surat implements, Ahmedabad implements, Rajkot implements, it will be governed by GMRC. It's an interesting concept to look at, and also how you can connect your BRT systems to this new system, which is about 180 crores per kilometer. That's the kind of a cost estimate which has been done. 80 crores and 200 crores and 300 crores. An elevated BRT would cost you about 35-40 crores. And that's a choice which cities have to make. I think we have more choices to make now. Yeah. Now, as I said, National Urban Transport Policy is very clear. Purpose of transport is not to move vehicles, but to move people and goods. I think that is the way it is. And then when you want to move people, what it talks about is with people and goods focus, you need to allocate road space equitably across different user groups or the stakeholders. You cannot have everything for personalized vehicles. I think you need to have a pedestrian space, you need to have a bicycle space, you need to have space for mixed traffic, and you need to have space for public transport. I think we need to have that allocation done appropriately and on street. As I said, land use and transport, we cannot let cities grow, let cities sprawl. We need to develop them in a way that multi-nodal, multi-center urban areas. That's how cities should grow. I think that's the second important thing. We miss an important connect of transport and health. There are two connects there. Pollution, air pollution creates lung diseases, creates cancer, creates a lot of other related matters there. And therefore, worsening air quality is not good, and therefore we need to clean up transport sector. Of course, we also need to clean up industry and several other activities which create pollution in the city. But transport is also a major contributor to air pollution degradation, and therefore how do we clean up air quality is an important thing. You clean up air quality generated from transport by 2 or 3 means, basically. One is reducing transport, moving to public transport, and therefore you do not actually have too many personalized vehicles on board. VKT is reduced, that is vehicle kilometers traveled, by shifting to public transport. shifting to non-motorized transport, and shifting to electric. I think these are ways by which you can reduce a contribution of air pollution to from the transport sector. But there is also another important dimension which we generally ignore. If you want to be healthy, you need to be active. If you want to be active, either you go to the gym and pedal the cycle in the gym, or you go to work, you go to wherever you want to go and pedal the cycle on the road. I think this is the choice which we don't actually exercise well. And it's a very strange thing that you get to see people who put their bicycle in the behind the car, take it all the way somewhere outside, they ride the bike and then put it back and then come back home, okay, in the car. I think this is a very strange kind of an urban development scenario which we have created ourselves. We need to change this circumstances. You need not go to a gym to pedal the bicycle. You should be able to stationary bicycle. What is the use of that? Instead, why don't you make it as a part of your own day-to-day life? In fact, we looked at where there is a study which is going on right now in Ahmedabad. We're trying to do like in different income group levels. How active are people? One thing very clear is that people are not active. How healthy are people? 60% of the people have one or the other communicable diseases. Okay, and therefore, if you want to reduce non-communicable diseases, and only way you can reduce non-communicable diseases is being active and healthy. I think that's a lifestyle is what matters there. And surprisingly, where there are rich people or the middle and higher middle income people, they depend on going to a gym for exercise. And when it comes to the middle and the lower middle income people, either they bicycle to their work or bicycle to their destinations, or they walk. I think walking and bicycling becomes major activities. How do we change this and make it more pronounced is a question. Can you create an environment where not because of compulsion but by choice people start walking and bicycling so that it becomes a healthy habit and we have a healthy society? I think this connection in our mobility planning we often fail to address. Our goals in the mobility planning are always linked to mobility goals, travel times, mode shares, things like that. But what we don't link to is environmental goals and health goals. Environmental goals related to air pollution and GHG emissions, and health goals relates to our non-communicable diseases, advances, and the activity levels of the people, how transport can contribute to increase activity levels. I think that is active mobility is what we need to promote. I think that is an important thing I wanted to highlight here. When it comes to road space, invariably, we are fascinated by car. It requires 3.6 square meter on road for one person. And as opposed to that, if you go to a bus, all that it requires is 0.6 square meters on road per person. I think this distinction, I think we fail to recognize, and therefore we need to have our choices very clear. But sometimes we wonder whether our education systems are creating this problem in the whole scene there. We are always, like when it comes to transportation and the streets, one thing which drives the whole planning and design is the PCU, that is the passenger car units there. Yeah, and this is one road, and then you have a mix of traffic, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and public transport. And then you have the PCU factors there, and everything is equated to a car. How many car equivalents? And then those car equivalents, and then you have a volume capacity ratio, and then we say whether a road volume capacity ratio is higher and therefore road is congested or not congested. Therefore, entire design revolves around this PCU and volume capacity ratio. What we fail to forget and recognize is that with this PCU, how many people are we moving? Are we moving people or are we moving vehicles? I think that is where we need to change our perspective. When you deal with PCUs, then what you do is you have to have 3 lanes in one direction, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, and then plus shyness and all that. Whatever remains become your NMT or a footpath. I think that cannot be, because in our PCU we do not have a PCU equivalent of number of passengers. It's just not there. And therefore, passengers are not even considered in our street design. You just put a standard of 2 meters or 1.8 meters and leave that aside. I think this whole thinking process amongst the professionals, but more so amongst the people, we need to make this change happen in terms of thinking, so that people start accepting we need wider footpaths, we need wider bicycle lanes, and we need space for public transport, and give others 2 lanes. What they can do is, it is up to them, because you cannot provide 8-lane, 8-lane, 10-lane roads in urban areas. It's just practically not possible, and you cannot even move them around. In this change, and then if you change the mix, okay, from 2-wheeler or 4-wheeler, if you move to public transport, your volume capacity changes. Again, further shifts, your volume capacity changes. Therefore, existing roads can carry more people with less vehicles and with at a reasonable or better speeds. I think that we need to look at. I would like to request Joshi sir, if we can think of something like a PCU factor, but it includes passengers capacity and not the vehicle capacity. Can you think of something? Maybe some of our future generation will think on those lines and develop a factor which is more relevant for our society. Then again, continuing with that further, we tend to think that like all of us are driving our vehicles. Okay, we did the study, this is from Ahmedabad, 2012. We have it for Surat as well. If you look at the entire scheme of things, there are about 13% of the people who are less than 12 years. They should not be driving. There are another 12%. Again, that's 25% of the people below 18 years. Either they have a limited driving license, that's for the type of vehicles which they can drive, or they just cannot drive. Therefore, 25% goes there. There are about 3.5% of the people who are, okay, 70 plus. They may not want to drive. I don't think some people are fit even now. But then most people post 70, they may not want to drive. That's add up to 30%. And then who can drive is 70%. Of that who can drive 70%, about 18 to 20% do not have a vehicle, and therefore they don't drive. And therefore, if you remove 70 and 20, what is left is about 54%. Of those 54%, how many really have licenses and who drive on a daily basis? It's only about 30%. Just imagine 72% of the entire city population, either they get driven around by their either a driver or their relative or a husband or a wife, whichever the case may be, or they take an auto rickshaw, or they walk, or they take a public transport. And therefore, who are we talking about in terms of planning for streets in urban areas? I think it should not be for 2-wheelers, it should not be for cars, it should be for public transport. 2-wheeler is a very flexible mode, but unfortunately, it is a very unsafe mode. In every city earlier, people who were pedestrians and who were on bicycles, they used to get killed, and now it is the 2-wheeler people who get killed in the streets of the roads there. Now, how safe are our urban streets, modes on urban streets? We're not talking about streets, I'm talking here about the modes there. What we did is, we do not have a measure like this. We're trying to develop a measure where what is the propensity of a mode to cause a fatality, okay? And then based on 2016 data of Ahmedabad, okay, the responsible modes, what you get, when we looked at it, okay, for carrying on an average 1 million passenger kilometers, okay, through bus, you are likely to create 1.3 deaths. And then if you carry the same number of people on a daily basis, in 1 year, you are likely to cause 3.2 fatalities. And if it is three-wheelers, it is 3.4 fatalities. And if it is car, it is 35.2 fatalities. And therefore, if you have to carry 1 million passengers, okay, every day, yeah, in 1 year, cars will actually are likely to cause 35 fatalities. And therefore, if you convert that into similar to a PCU factor, like a factor like propensity index, fatality propensity index, if the bus is 1, bus causes 1% fatality, two-wheelers causes 2.5, three-wheelers again 2.5, whereas cars cause 25 times more fatal to carry same number of passenger kilometers. Remember that. But then the serious injuries, it's even worse. It's 1:45. And therefore, we need to be concerned how many cars we would like to have on our streets, and then whether it's all to have or not to have. I think that's an important thing I wanted to add here. Another important aspect which we have in our cities, in the developed world, from the non-motorized, they went to public transport, and now after that they switched over to personalized transport. Whereas in our world, and more so in case of Surat, what has happened is from work and non-motorized transport, we moved to three-wheelers and we moved to two-wheelers. Now people are trying to move to car, and we want to bring them onto, basically stop them from going to car and instead bring them onto public transport. And then there is also this technologically innovation which has led to creation of digitally driven public transport, that is like Uber and Ola. I think they are becoming tech-driven modes are becoming very, very popular there. Now, how do we create this puzzle, basically resolve this puzzle? People, now IPTS, it is probably now not a very standard mode, therefore they want to shift. Two-wheeler gives flexibility, but then I am having better income and I would like to go to car, but it is not going to be sustainable. Then some will go to car, but then most we would like to bring them onto public transport. Can we make public transport as a choice mode and not a mode where I do not have an option, I have to take it? Okay, it should become a choice mode, both for those people who own vehicle and also for people who do not own vehicle. Public transport should become a choice mode, and that is what is the integrated transport. There's one other important mindset which people have, is that the metros will resolve all sorts of problems. Metros will not resolve all sorts of problems. Metros are necessary to carry certain high capacity, create and provide for high capacity mobility. You look at any big cities there, yeah? London, 62% is carried by bus and 38% by rail of the total public transport ridership. Sao Paulo, 63-37. Mexico, 86 and 14. Hong Kong, 57-43. Singapore, 61 and 39. With an elaborate metro network, London has about 400 plus kilometers of underground network. Despite that, the buses, that's about 6,000 buses, carry much more passengers, and therefore, without a good bus, your public transport is not going to work. Yeah, and therefore, but then public transport, you need to move it on street with priority, otherwise it's not going to be possible. Therefore, priority can be full segregation and part segregation. That's something which can happen. It needs to be integrated, and therefore it has to go to the last mile, integrated institutionally, otherwise, fair and so on and so forth. I will now, I think, move to, okay, one or two quick graphs. One is this trip lengths, no? Irrespective of the city size, it's a very strange thing. City sizes do not matter. In terms of work trips, this is based on 2011. You have trips, okay, all the million plus trip cities here, the 50 cities, and average trip length of non-motorized modes is 5 kilometers, and then motorized is 11 kilometers. and then average between the two is 8 kilometers there. Irrespective of the city size, people have to travel longer for work, 11 kilometers. That's average. And the non-motorized, it is 5 kilometers. I think this is an interesting picture. Can we reduce it? Can we make cities compact? I think that is the key. And Surat is probably of the lowest trip length city in the entire graph, if you really look at it that way. Of all the big cities, Surat's trip lengths are much, much lower than many other cities. Boat shares, we have largely dependent on pedestrians, and then NMT, and then the public transport, and very little on cars. Only about 3 or 4%. I think that is where we are. I think that gives us a kind of a background in terms of how do we think and how do we react and how do we respond. I think our whole response system is very clear. We need to look at collective modes. We need to look at non-motorized modes. We need to look at cleaner modes, and we need to be more active, and we need to reduce pollution. I think if you want to make sustainable mobility and better economic progress, quality of life, I think these becomes our basic criteria there. Yeah. Joshi Sahab, then I would like to switch over to the Surat, what we have done. I think this is something what Surat Municipal Corporation has done. We have about half an hour now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I would like to move to the Surat part. There, this is the work, remarkable work of the Municipal Corporation of Ahmedabad and Municipal Corporation of Surat. In the entire country, Surat is the only city which has physical and fair integration of public transport. There is no other city in the country, and even in terms of the globally, there are very few cities which have achieved this aspect, and I think that's what makes Surat different there. I do not know whether you are aware. Before 2016, in 10 years, Surat had built some 30 flyovers. Okay, but then 2016 to 2021, 2012 and 2016 to 2021, Surat procured about 700 buses. I think that shift, a tectonic shift, you may want to call it, happened within the thinking at the municipal corporation. And that is what we are seeing now in terms of the better roads there. All of these are, you are aware, I don't need to talk about area. An important thing you must remember, SMC area is still getting densified. Much of the densification is happening even within the SMC, even today. Okay, outside growth is happening, but not to the extent that you observe in other cities there. Vehicular growth, of course, was low, but is very rapid. If you look at, it's an interesting thing. We did some exercise. Two-wheelers in 1998, there were 133 two-wheelers and 7 cars per 1,000 people. In 2016, 133 became 273 two-wheelers and 7 cars became 23 cars per 1,000 people. That's about 300 personalized vehicles per 1,000 people there. That's almost equal to what you have in Europe. Europe has cars and we have two-wheelers, and our car ownership today is much less there. If with GDP per capita, the rate at which it is growing, if we are able to project it with the future GDP, we are likely to end up with anywhere from 340 to 430 or 440 two-wheelers, depending on how aggressive things would be in terms of by 2050. And then we'll end up with about 100 cars. That is what Singapore has today. That's where it has capped, about 115. Or you may end up going up to 200 cars per 1,000 people. 630 vehicles per 1,000 people. That's more like what you have in American cities. They are almost like 800, and we probably will be about 650. And therefore, how we control this growth is going to be an important thing. Whether we want to let Surat have 100 cars per 1,000 people limited there, or we would like it to go up to 200 cars, and therefore it will be like a free-for-all. There won't be any road, but you can probably put your car on the cart and then drive it around. How is that going to happen? I think these are some of the questions which we need to ask. I've already talked about travel characteristics, and walk is almost like 41%. Bicycle has gone out of the Surat's mobility choice there. From 19% in 1988, it has come down to 2%. Now, of course, SMC along with SVNIT trying to build up this NMT ridership. I think that's a very good move there. As I said, trip length is much low. Travel times, it is, people talk about 15-minute city, basically. A gentleman from Paris talks about 15-minute city. Singapore talks about much of their trip should not be more than 15 minutes and 30 minutes maximum. And in fact, Surat, if we take the total trips, it's 18 minutes. If we take motorized trips, average trip length is 13.5 minutes there. I think you are right there. Will we be able to maintain it is the question which Surat always asks. Accidents, of course, very clear. Wherever the trucks and the big vehicles go, that's where we have all the accidents there. A lot of internal goods movement because the goods activities are located. It's a trade city, it's an industrial city. Therefore, a lot of trucks come into the city. And therefore, both your accidents is one part of it, congestion is another part of it. And if you really see the logistics operations in Surat city, there are a lot of back and forth, significant empty runs happening. Okay, because of the processing part of it. Okay, one trip he goes, unload and come back and pick up something else, go back. There is no kind of a zero return policy which is happening there. How we can transform this logistics so that goods trips within the city comes down significantly. I think there is a big scope there. We need to be working on that. That's all what you have in terms of summary. 60 lakh people. Density, in some developed density is very high, 376 persons per hectare. And if we take Surat urban area, net density is 253, gross density is 160. Major road network of about 700 kilometers, and it's the longest BRTS system in the country today. And city bus and BRT together, you have a network of about 500 kilometers. 5 years ago, we did not have this network. We only had some small BRT network. I think that is the change which has happened, a big change there. Travel speeds are about 30 kilometers for two-wheelers, 25 for three-wheelers, and 20 kilometers for BRT, public transport there. Yeah, air quality is a concern. I will talk about it at a later stage. If things continue, what is likely to happen? And population will double. About 120 lakhs is what it would become in the between 2040 and 2050. Okay, that's in 20-25 years. Vehicles will triple. Passenger journeys are also likely to be 2.5 times. Congestion is likely to go up by 4%, 4 times. Accident probability is likely to go up by 2.5 times. Travel times is likely to go up by 2.5 times. GHG emissions also by 2 times. Okay, average speeds are likely to go down. Now, if things continuing like this, how we can reverse it and maintain the current levels and improve on them is what the city's mobility plan attempted, and other actions are also initiated. Now you see the speeds when compared to other cities, 2019 before COVID. Yeah, the top line, what you see there from morning till evening, it is Surat there. And it is very distinct in terms of the speeds, what you have. Uh, like its speed is calculated to reach city center from a distance of 5 kilometers around the city center. Okay, the worst case is Hyderabad and Delhi, and the best case, what you see here, is Surat, and the difference is from 15 kilometers to 20. That's a 5 kilometer difference in speed. That is an enormous difference there. We are way ahead in terms of speeds. Can we maintain is the question which we'll have. And then Surat Municipal Corporation defined, it undertook a visioning exercise wherein it talked about Saral Parivahan, Samruddha Janajeevan. Yeah, if you have a simple, comfortable, convenient transport system, then through that you will be able to create, okay, a prosperous society, both economically and qualitatively. I think that is the whole thing, and it had strategies which it set in: safe, sustainable, accessible, reliable, advanced, and low carbon mobility. I think these are the strategies, and along with the strategies, they actually developed various action plans which are listed there. For want of time, I think I'll skip this details there. Now I'll come to the integrated public transport system. There are five pillars of this integration. You have to have a physical integration. That means I don't get dropped at one place and I need to walk to pick up another bus there. Okay, that is the physical integration. Is same place, you get on from one bus and you take another bus, that or another mode basically. Yeah, that is the physical integration. Fare integration, essentially you take a ticket and then again you take a ticket when you change mode. I think that is not there in Surat. Like you can buy one ticket from anywhere to anywhere. You can use city bus to BRT, BRT to city bus to city bus, or BRT to BRT. I think that is the beauty of the system which has been created in Surat there. Then you need infrastructure integration, you need technology, which is as an integrator, and then institutional integration. Under SMC, it is the Surat City Link, which actually runs BRT system, it runs high mobility corridor, it runs city bus system. All three together, I think this is a unique proposition. As and when we have metro or other forms of metro coming in, I think it will be easy to get those systems integrated with the existing three bus-based systems there. The BRTS, city bus and HMC, all of them are integrated such that they will cross at one or two places where you can interchange from one mode to another mode. But then there is also an effort to develop the non-motorized mode integrated to the BRT there. The fare integration I've already talked about. Passengers pay about 8 rupees on an average, is one of the lowest in the country, globally probably. 4 rupees is the minimum fare for 2 kilometers. That's also one of the lowest. These days 6 rupees and 8 rupees is the lowest in other cities. Therefore, affordability wise, Surat has done reasonably well. Segregation, you have BRT, you have CBS and HMC and CityLink which operates there. Then ITMS is there, both for passengers as well as a vehicle tracking and real-time monitoring. I think this is something which you are all experiencing. AFCS, and this is something which somehow one never thought that it is possible for an AFC system to be designed such that you can buy a ticket on city bus and get onto a BRT closed system operations. But then it's happening. Very state-of-the-art infrastructure in terms of the bus depots, bus stations. And then you have, if you really look at other mode which is being introduced now, that is the metro. Orange line is what you have as metro. Red is your BRT, and blue is your city bus lines, and then the green is your HMC. And all of these would get integrated at different places. I think that is the way it has been planned. 2007, this is how it would look in front of the station. Again, 2005, and this is 2007. Something which was introduced but did not last long. And then now we have, of course, the Canal Road BRT, the city buses, HMC corridor. All of this is there, it's just come about. And we have about 500 kilometers of bus network operating 3 different systems as one system. I think that is the beauty there. Now, are people using it this way? That's an interesting stuff which we also looked at. Before COVID, there were about 270,000 passengers using bus system in Surat. It was about 25-30,000 in 2014-15. Okay, it's almost like in about 6 years time, 5 years, 6 years time, it is a 10 times increase is what we have seen in terms of the ridership on the bus. Of that ridership, actually how many take direct bus, how many actually interchange between buses, between modes? I think that is what was being attempted to be calculated. We looked at the tickets and everything else there. Of the total 270,000 people, about 20% of them actually change mode. It's maybe BRT to BRT, BRT to city bus to BRT, or city bus to city bus. I think that is about like almost like 55,000 people have changed one bus to the other bus. I think that's a big number there, 20%. If you go the way Metro Delhi calculates their ridership, then you have to add 50,000 to the existing 270,000. That would take you up to almost like 330,000 people boardings. That is the way it would be. Now the question is, BRT and a city bus interchange is significant. BRT is also significant. Whereas city bus to city bus, it is still not big. It's only about 6-7%. How you can make that much more pronounced, how people start knowing it and using it, I think that is where our effort is to be taken forward. Daily ridership, how it has grown, I think that is very important. I think this graph is very interesting. I would like you to look at it. Any bus system, when it reaches 65% load factor, you rate it as something which is operating well. If you look at the passengers per bus per day average, the BRT reaches about 650, 660, around 700. I think that is the number which BRT reaches there. With that number, if you go by, the load factor for a BRT bus today, at least before COVID, was 67%. That means as far as the passenger ridership levels on BRT bus was beyond or more than the acceptable minimum of 65%. And that's a good ridership there. And that has been achieved from 200, it went up to 685, 700, and sometimes even beyond 700. I think that is where it has caught up the eyes or imagination of the people of Surat. How has city bus improved? Starting with 120 average per bus per day, now we have gone up to 300, 350. I think that is the increase. That load factor is about 35 to 38%. And we need to increase it by another 20% to be able to reach the desired minimum. That's about 60%. And if you go up to 65%, that would be a very good thing to happen. What I'm trying to say, 2 things. One is city bus, when you introduce, people will not change their habit and come on board next day. It takes time to change habits, and it has taken time from 2016, now 2021 we are talking about. Okay, in these many years, now people have started liking and getting used to riding a bus. We can, with more aggressive effort in terms of advertising, in terms of incentivizing, we can push it further and take it forward. But once you introduce a bus, have patience. And please note that we have no other option but bus. And therefore, how do we promote bus? How do you make bus a viable mode? I think that is the question. I'm not talking about revenues received from the total revenue and the cost calculations, because nowhere in the world that people expect buses to recover full costs. If we are able to recover 50% of the cost, that is good. If you go up to 75%, that is more than enough, because 25% is generally given as a viability gap from higher levels of governments there. Now, this is the metro, and that integration I've already mentioned it. I don't need to further go on. The road network, how it has been planned all the way up to Ring Road. Maybe Ring Road is one option where one may want to introduce a Metro Neo at some point there. Then bicycle sharing system, of course, SVNIT has taken the lead in supporting municipal corporation. Chartered logistics are operating the system right now, both in the central zone and outside. Now, along the BRT corridor as well, and along the BRTS, both east, west, north, south. I think there are about 5,000 people on a daily basis use bicycle today, even today, I think right now. And then it can go up twice, thrice, 4 times quickly. Okay, once people start getting familiarized with this system there. We do have bicycle tracks. Often people abuse it, misuse it. We need to see how we can make them available for bicyclists. And these are the places where you have the bicycles located, yeah, and the chargers are there. About 107 docking stations are live today. It's a nice picture, right? And see the inclusivity there. It's women, it's bicycles. I think that's the best thing. Our daughters going on a bike, cycle would be a very smart thing to look at, very desirable to look at. Okay, I think that's what it's talked about. And pedestrian facilities is the important thing there. If you don't provide good walking spaces, then public transport will not succeed and city will not succeed, in fact. I think that is the way it is. The city government has done certain interesting work. Now it has created, of course, Surat's uniqueness is that the streets are not just meant for moving vehicles or people. They're also meant for, okay, sitting together, eating together, okay, a lot of things of that activity space, basically. Therefore, SMC has responded to that. They built people's places, very high quality, state of the art. Okay, you can compare these with any global public places created. Okay, I think especially the Canal Road, what has been done, and many other places. I think it's enormous. This is, again, you have space for kids, you have a place for adults. Therefore, the function of the street now is changing. Moving is only one function. There are other things. Okay, streets are for the people to meet, to sit together, chit chat, to play, to exercise, to walk. I think that is the movement in the upward ladder of sustainable mobility systems that Surat is moving forward. And I'm sure there are many more things of this kind we will get to see in the times to come. Interchanges, okay, of different levels are required. I think this is another thing which is important. Now that we will be doing another development plan, we need to create places where different modes interchange, and those places will require land and other things, and therefore these interchanges have to be thought about both inside the city and especially on the ring road right away from the beginning, acquiring land and reserving it for public interchange places. That's something which talk about. Inclusive mobility, it brings in safety, it brings in security for those who travel in these rickshaws. They are mainly used to ferry students to the schools, children to the schools. Mothers are happy, parents are happy because they are in the safe hands. Women, they get their livelihoods. I think this is a fantastic combination. How we can expand this? Right now, again, Surat Municipal Corporation has a plan in this direction to make it bigger. I think that's something which we should talk about. Electric bus, the clean bus, 150 buses will be there. They're already there on road, but then many more will be there on BRT and other bus corridors very soon. And finally, integrated land use transport. You need to enable your urban structure. You need to align your development with public transport. You need to think of complete network, complete streets, transit-oriented development and value capture. Multimodal transport facilities have to be created. Of course, railway station is one place where something is happening, but then beyond that, we need to look at many more. Accessibility improvements and local area plans are necessary. We need to start thinking about redevelopment of cities because both industrial areas as well as old city is going to get redeveloped. And how we will get that redevelopment happen, I think is critical there. Okay, these are future rapid transit corridors. Whether you want to put a metro neo, you want to put anything else is possible. The ring road is there, Hajira Street is there, the one which takes you to Sion and other places. There are several corridors, including possibility of twin city, twinning a city with Surat, that is Navsari Surat, is possible. I think those are other areas one should look at. Yep. Parking policy has come in. Very progressively worked out policy. Some dilution has happened in terms of finalization and how it is implemented. But then it's still quite ahead of many others when it comes to demand management through parking policy. Accident management is something which we need to focus. There is a dichotomy in the sense that police and city, how they work together, how do we educate? I think that is the most important thing. People, so that they behave in a safe way, they drive safely. Yeah. Urban freight, as I said, there's a lot of potential where we need to work. Unfortunately, it is seen as an activity which is fully under a private regime. Municipal corporation, except for markets development and street development, has limited role. And therefore, how do we get freight associations, trade association, industrial association to sit together, look at their logistic movement in a different way so that it's more efficient and less polluting. I think that is the whole scenario there. Some efforts in the plan are there. Now, this is where I think more work has to happen. What we need to recognize is that we say water supply is a local responsibility, but then water supply can be augmented by bringing water from outside. Whereas a mobility or a transportation has to be created and performed locally. There is no bring something else to operate here and take it back without impacting local. And therefore, it is rightly that municipal corporation has taken transport as a primary responsibility. It has to become a mandatory responsibility in other cities as well, not just obligatory, but it should become a mandatory responsibility. And whenever you deliver a service, you need to charge people who get benefit out of it, who consume, yes, definitely, and therefore public transport users will pay a fare. But There are also others users who get benefit out of it because of improved access, because of reduced congestion. Therefore, how do we tax? I think we believe a transport impact tax as part of the property tax needs to be introduced. Like water tax, you must have a transport tax, and then that becomes a separate fund created and which goes in there. In addition, you can also top up with that value capture and congestion pricing. All of that together goes in as a fund. Ultimately, at some stage, public transport agencies have to become purely professional bodies, managed professionally with a very defined social and service obligations, social objectives and service obligations. I think that is the way ahead which we need to create, and funding becomes a key thing. If you depend on other bodies to fund you, then it's going to be an issue. It should become automatic. You have so much money, how you plan for your transport this year, next year, next to next year. I think that's the kind of an independency which will have to come in there. Governance, of course, we have now Surat Metro, which will be there, which will be governed by GMRC, Bus and BRTS Citylink, and then SMC, of course, SMC and SUDA are the authorities there. And over and above that, I think we need now time that we create a urban unified metropolitan transit authority. I think that has to come in. Government of Gujarat is looking at one for Surat, one for Ahmedabad. Wherever they create a metro, they are thinking of having a AMTA kind of an organization there. And technology acts as an integrator. You're possible to integrate services. You're possible to network, information sharing, and then to monitor through technology. And finally, you're able to develop analytics. I think that will gives you clear control over the overall situation. You know what is happening in ITMS. I think I'll skip some of these slides. Fare collection system and the control center, the brain, okay, and then the future integrated traffic and transport administrative center, which has been looked at. The scope of ITMS, the coverage part is there, and mobility, how we are moved, okay, and how we become an integrated transport service so that our sustainability objectives are achieved. I will leave it at this, and we'll be very, very happy to. Okay, one small thing. How have we improved? I think there is also some work. We did some benchmarking as part of the Government of India's project. 2012, you will see there were no greens, there were all oranges and yellows and one red. And one red is non-motorized, and that's where Surat city is working on currently. Street network performance has slightly gone down. Otherwise, from 2012 to 29, we have improved significantly. The total scoring would be about 40. That is the worst situation. And 10 is the best situation. And 2019, the total score of Surat is 24. Okay, slightly below average, but then it is one of the very high performing city in the country, and it's improving over a period of time, not stagnant. There is also an exercise which was done, Sustainable Urban Transport Index, that is a United Nations initiative. Surat's score of all the 10 indicators which they identified, those 10 indicators include planning, extent of transport plans covering sustainable mobility, mode share, access to public transport, quality and reliability of public transport, fatalities, affordability, operational cost recovery, investment in public transport systems, air quality, and greenhouse gas emissions. The score of Surat is 60.92, I would say 61, It performed well in terms of its plans and programs. It performs well in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, performs well in terms of access, quality, reliability of public transport, traffic fatalities, and affordable pricing, and then investment in public transport systems. There are requirements to improve operational cost recovery. I think, as I said, our load factors have improved, but then we need to go forward. Air quality is something, it is not because of transport, but because of other things that air quality is poor. How that gets improved, what contribution transport can make by greening and so on and so forth, we need to think of that. Mode share has to go up. And as I said, mobility choice or mode choice is a habit. And once the habit forms, people tend to stick to that habit. How do you change that? It takes time, and Surat has made all the best foot forward in bringing people on board the public transport. I'm sure with time to come, more and more people will come on board public transport, and public transport becomes a primary carrier of people in Surat. I think I will comparison with other cities, global cities. If you look at Kathmandu, Jakarta, Hanoi, and Sri Lanka, that is Colombo, and Surat. Surat is highest with 60.9, and the worst case is Hanoi, which is 32.1. Hanoi is in Vietnam. Okay, thank you. And I'll leave it there. We'll be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Professor. It was excellent and very, very informative and comprehensive talk. Now it's open for any query, so audience can feel free to interact with the professor.
I guess there is one question in chat box. Yeah, the question is, integrated transportation tax by SMC, if proposed, shall be a good option that the lifetime road tax component by SMC is removed while purchasing each vehicle across the city. Else, it will be duplication of the tax. Please enlighten on this.
Yeah. Look, these are two different things. Road tax is levied by the state, and the property tax levy is a different thing. These are two different things. Beneficiary pay is one, and the road tax is collected by the state, and it goes to the state. Yeah, and therefore there is no duplication there in that sense. Am I understanding the question right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You can write in chat box. Yeah, there is one more question. For integrated transport, how much users' behavior would be imperative for its success rather than transport supply-based approach?
It is a chicken and egg question, right? Which comes first? If you don't have supply integrated transport as if you don't have the provisioning in the supply system, how will people change their behavior? If you provide for it and you encourage people to come into and start using integrated public transport. Otherwise, people will go away from public transport. In fact, there are a lot of people keep harping about public transport and a feeder system. You talk about feeders as this mode and that mode, whereas in many ways, Surat has built one system, all buses-based systems, as one system which takes you all the way from your home to wherever you want to go. I think that is the integration. You don't want to change mode and get connected and take another mode to go somewhere. It's a bus and bus and bus. I think that is what is the beauty of what you have in Surat. And that can only happen, public can only start using it only when that has come in place. I think that's the point one need to clear. But it is very, very critical how we influence user behavior. I think that is what I think Sanjay Gupta Sahib is saying, that what strategies you adopt to influence people to use it. I think that's important. Yes, please.
Yeah, in addition to that, one more question is that are there any benchmarks globally for the successfully integrated transport system?
There are multimodal. In fact, except very recently, we have developed a multimodal integration maturity matrix. Okay, and we still have to assess various cities in India, but then there is no very one benchmark which at least I am aware of. But then yes, Surat does fare high in terms of the supply side initiative. I think people have started using it. How we get more people is the question I think we need to work with. Yes, please.
Yeah. So one more question. What is the scope of market segmentation in public transport of Surat?
Look, there are several ways of looking at it. One level of market segmentation you do is by trip length, long trips, medium length trips, and short trips. Basically, that's what you would do. And then work trips, education trips, and other trips is another way of looking at it. Public transport generally focuses on long, regular trips, that is work and education. But then, given with high frequency, you give an option even for short trip users to use it. I think what I did not mention here is the frequency at which the buses are operating in Surat. Even during off-peak hour, you run your buses at 10-12 minutes. Otherwise, peak hour it is quite low. It's almost like 4 or 5 minutes headway is what we operate. But then there are short trips. What we have not done as part of the plan, at some stage we still have to find a way to integrate, is this whole intermediary public transport. Its role right now, for a long time in Surat, it had replaced or it was performing the role of public transport. Now, what is its role and how that market will have to operate? I think that's something which we need to explore further, especially the micro mobility part of it.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you, sir. So still there are few questions. We'll take one or two as we have 5 minutes left. One question is, can micro mobility be used as public transport in Surat as it is found in various foreign countries?
In fact, if you look at it, Surat is the first city to operate midi buses in BRT. Now, we do not have micro buses which are operated without a conductor, but only driver would be there. As a last mile connectivity, it would be a very good option. Okay, what you have is Chakras today. Instead, if you can have a micro mode, that is a small vehicle, 10 seaters and 12 seaters, that is better than rickshaws carrying 8 people. Yes, there would be a lot of scope for that.
Okay, sir. One question is that is it possible to use existing BRTS bus station terraces as the station for the elevated guided small buses overhead in the existing running buses system?
Why would you duplicate?
I guess the person is trying to ask, then can the same space be used for the elevated BRTS?
Yes, if you want to elevate it, you can do that. Yeah, but look, if you want to, if there is too much of a space constraint, one can also think of an elevated BRT or even Metro Neo. Metro Neo is a BRT essentially. It's a bus system. Elevated is possible. If you want to do it, you can elevate it. But not two levels operations. No, I don't think so.
Okay, sir. So I guess we should stop over here with question and answers. And now I request Professor Bhaskar Bhatt, Honorary Treasurer, IUTI Regional Chapter, Gujarat, Rajasthan, to please give vote of thanks.
Yeah, am I audible, Nandan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me this opportunity, Nandan. On behalf of IUT SPNIT Gujarat Rajasthan Regional Chapter, uh, the team and all the members, I sincerely am thankful to Professor Dr. Shivanand Swami, who has enlightened on this topic of integrated transportation with very much context of Surat city. Thank you so very much, sir. And the question and answer round was also quite informative, and there are a lot of chat consistently coming in, thanking you for a very informative and nice presentation, sir. At this juncture, I am also thankful to all the executive committee members, Dr. L.B. Jala, Sant Pandya, Prakash Dattaji, Dr. S. Arkatkar, from the chapter, and Ministry of Housing and Urban, rather MOHUS, sorry, and IUT New Delhi for making this event possible in a way. I also am thankful to all the participants interested and working in the traffic transportation, patient listening during entire course of this presentation, and posting a lot of questions as well for making the question answer session quite interactive. And all the respected professors and professionals and IUT members for joining us for the day. Last but not the least, I must thank Engineer Nandan Davda, who has been conducting the event as an master of ceremony. And also, I must mention that all the background job under guidance of Dr. J.J. Joshi, he has been performing for materializing this event. Without failure, I must mention and thank Dr. J.J. Joshi and Dr. Rajesh Pandya for taking the initiative to materialize this event and making all sort of communication with all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Then again, thanks to Professor Swami. On a single phone call, he agreed, and he 3-4 days back only I had talked with him. So he's such a simple person.
I'm there for Surat anytime.
Yes. He has
24/7.
given us open, permission that anytime he will be available for delivering talk on any issue related to urban transport. So thank you so much, Professor, and thank you, Bhaskar, Dr. Rajesh Pandya, Nandan, for organizing this, making this event successful. Thanks a lot, all. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.